So my name is Richie Santosdiaz, and people know me as an economic development advisor. So that culminates in terms of working in the management consulting space, where I'm XPA Consulting that was based in London for many years, in the context of advising various public sector entities across the world on economic development, especially around internationalization, international trade, and foreign direct investment. And then obviously as well in terms of the other vertical, where in terms of commentary, where I kind of discuss it, in terms of quote expert with regards to things that are happening in economic development and wider internationalization. So in a nutshell, it's kind of me in terms of economic development. And then I also have a very much few passions as well. So sectors I've fallen in love with include the likes of fintech, where at the moment I'm currently the head of the Middle East and Africa for two global publications called the FinTech Times, as well as the FinTech Power 50 that are both based in London. And me myself at the moment, after many years in London, originally from the US, I now reside in sunny Dubai, as you can see from the reflections in my window. Economic development is such a broad topic, and why partially I moved to the Middle East, specifically in Dubai, is it's such a focus at the moment, especially with all these wider economic development strategies happening across the likes of Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, etc. And it's really, really interesting to see from a very top in terms of governments trying to, identify the challenges in terms of, our economies, in the likes of, let's say, Saudi Arabia, where, it's very oil reliant, one day that's going to run out. And in terms of kind of this wider economic development, in this region and in many parts of the world as well, such as in Africa and in Latin America, but especially here in the Gulf, in the Middle East as a whole, you see a lot of that from the top in terms of governments trying to make their economies diversified, and they're doing that essentially through various means, promoting a lot of high-tech sectors and trying to promote internationalization, in the space here, especially in the Middle East and Africa, but especially in the Gulf Cooperation Council, you're seeing internationalization as a huge component of these national strategies that are essentially promoting economic development and diversification. So you're seeing the likes of Saudi Arabia with Saudi Vision 2030 opening up its borders, essentially promoting it itself as a, business friendly, attracting foreign direct investment, as well as trying to boost its ecosystem so that one day those players can also be huge components of the wider international trade ecosystem. So it's very, very exciting, especially in the Gulf Cooperation Council and even in wider emerging economies. Like I was saying earlier, you see it as well in Latin America, you see it in parts of Southeast Asia, you see it in Africa, you see a lot of that. And then to touch upon COVID-19, yes, of course, I think it kind of essentially has accelerated and confirmed a lot of those strategies, particularly that before even COVID, digitalization, digital transformation was a huge thing. For example, in Saudi Arabia, with the likes of Saudi Vision 2030, one of the verticals is actually to modernize and digitalize its financial services. So obviously you're seeing the likes of fintech grow in Saudi Arabia as a consequence of that. And COVID-19 has accelerated a lot of that across the world because we have to go virtual. In any emerging economy, I think, obviously because you see trends in terms of who are the key investors, who are the key people in the international trade and FDI circle. Obviously, those tend to be developed, the majority developed economies, right? So it's not so much an issue in, let's say, the Middle East, or I think it's just kind of that kind of new market, kind of new opportunity, but it presents a lot of new challenges. So obviously, so even if you're doing business in Latin America, if you're an American company or government, or from Europe to the Middle East, often you're going to be seeing a lot of those challenges and a lot of that uncertainty, because obviously, it's a new market for you. You're dealing with new cultures, you're dealing with new languages, and I think humans generally, obviously many of us don't like change, right? So it becomes very, very difficult in terms of trying to not only persuade yourself, to persuade your company, to persuade your government to open this kind of new corridor, I'll call it, in terms of trade and investment with somebody else, and let's say, for example, in the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council, but obviously you use a lot of that to mitigate it. And going to my earlier point with economic development strategies, with regards to this region, trying to show from a top level, for example, that government is supporting those initiatives is helping, giving businesses easing doing business for foreign investors, for investors, for even just the common person in terms of tourism, to facilitate that, to make visas easier, to have company setups where you're 100% ownership. For example, in the UAE, they just announced that where you can now own 100% of your business if you're going to set it up here in the UAE. So a lot of this kind of facilitation, combination of your technical things, but obviously also the wider kind of, I'll call it PR campaign, in terms of showing that obviously it is easy to do business. It's open. We meaning those governments are supporting it, and you obviously, for other emerging economies, I wouldn't say the GCC is an emerging economy. Obviously, it's probably, it's very much developed, but in other parts of the world where it's emerging, you see a lot of those kind of needs where that kind of facilitation of making business easier for the international community, as well as also the wider kind of PR campaign, that it is easy for investors, it's easy for anybody to be part of the ecosystem, whether it be local, whether it be foreigners. Absolutely. I think Dubai and the wider Gulf Cooperation Council, amongst their 6 members, definitely have that aspiration to be a tech hub as a whole. So I'll use the example of Dubai, where I currently live, that going from the previous comments I was making, obviously with any hub, whether it be tech, whether it be agriculture, whether it be other sectors, you have, support from the government, from the top, and then obviously things happening organically, right? So in the case of Dubai, which is my home, obviously from an organic point of view, Dubai has become a regional hub without a doubt, in terms of not just tech, but tourism and other sectors, as we know. And in the case of tech, obviously you have it in both ways, where it was, where it is support from the government, from the top, with the likes of various strategies. And then obviously as well in terms of that kind of organic growth, where you see talent from across the region and beyond coming here, setting up companies in the tech space and solving challenges that are needed via tech. So for example, with the government support, you see a lot of various strategies. For example, you have something called in Dubai, Smart Dubai 2021, which is essentially a strategy by Smart Dubai, which is essentially saying Dubai will be the happiest place by utilizing technological solutions, right? So you're seeing these kind of strategies again to kind of make the likes of Dubai do that, being a smart city, having citizens have everything seamless, being a leader in blockchain. And then obviously then, like I said, going to organic, you're seeing a lot of, people from around the world, whether it be from America, whether it be from other parts of the Middle East, setting up their companies here, identifying, solving challenges with regards to tech. And then obviously with regards to, even locals here as well, you're starting to see entrepreneurship as well from the youth and the future generations as well. And obviously, on a final note, because Dubai is strategically placed, right, with the likes of the tourism industry, with transportation and logistics, it makes total sense that it's strategically placed as well to be a leader in tech. Have I lived in many countries? Absolutely. I mean, I've lived in 7. This is my 7th country, and I've lived more outside of the US than I've lived in the US. So I think it's, for those like me who, from a child, even now as an adult, in terms of living abroad from your native country, I think it definitely plays a huge part in terms of who you are as a person. And for me, I'm noticing it now as I get older, in terms of I'm definitely very flexible. And I think in terms of my situations and my surroundings, and I think that stems from my childhood, where I was just like a mess in terms of living in various parts of the world. And in terms of, the changes culturally from let's say the Middle East, where I'm currently at, or in Europe where I was living before, of course, obviously there's different changes. But, I think, for me, at least in terms of internationalization, right, in terms of this kind of work that I do, my own personal kind of being, I think it's allowed me to be very much adaptable in terms of my surroundings. But obviously there is a lot of, differences in terms of doing business here from a cultural point of view. But saying that, we live in a globalized world. And I think, people that live here, for example, many of them have, went to school, went to university in America, especially, or the UK in particular. So you have a lot of those kind of changes. And then with regards to, with the wider economic development that I keep hitting to the world about, obviously, that internationalization component is a huge part and trickles down to the future generations as well, right? So for example, with regards to the UAE, I believe that the public school sector is currently going through an 8-year program where their medium of instruction is actually going to be in English, right? So you're starting to see a lot of these kind of not kind of trickle down in terms of what's happening, to be much more open, to be much more adaptable to a global market. And if my country, let's say the UAE or Saudi Arabia, is going to be much more open with regards to its economic development strategies that's being implemented, then obviously that starts from the youth. So like I was saying with schools, even here in the UAE, that English in the public school system is becoming the medium instruction, then obviously that helps facilitate ease of doing business, for my own childhood, and then obviously for future generations to come. So I just published a report around fintech in the Middle East and Africa, and it was very, very unique in the sense that it was one of the few to try to be as comprehensive as possible. So in terms of what I'm going to do next, I think I'm going to take a vacation because obviously COVID hasn't allowed us to do that. So I think I'm going to try to do that pretty soon. But on a serious note, I think besides the vacation somewhere exotic, maybe I'd like to write a book eventually on economic development, and maybe one day do a PhD. But in terms of kind of my own kind of short term, I think with what the pandemic has taught us, it's kind of good to dream, but obviously you live for the moment. So I'm just very happy at the moment. And like I said, I think the first thing on my mind would be definitely a vacation, and then definitely a book at some point, and then maybe a PhD as well.